Welcome to War Room Impeachment. Stephen K. Bannon, Raheem Kassam, Jason Miller. We're live in the Breitbart Embassy first floor. I guess it's the basement. We've turned this into a war room. It is the, 13th of November? The year of our Lord 2019. It's episode 26. We're live in the John Fredericks Radio Network. Also up on iTunes, Stitcher, everywhere else. I want you to hit subscribe. I want to talk about...
What's Stitcher, Steve?
I have no earthly idea. It's not Tinder, is it? No.
We're not live on Tinder.
I just swiped left. Okay, so we have a huge day. It's game day today, and we've got a very special guest, one that ties directly into the 31 freshman Democrats. We're going to get to a second, although John Fredericks stole a little bit of our thunder at the end of the last hour, but that's okay. I want to go to game day very quickly. Raheem Kassam from the UK, Brexit fame, Nigel Farage's right-hand man, and Jason Miller, the master communication strategist for the Donald Trump amazing comeback in 2016. Also, the transition communications director for the transition to the presidency. Raheem, Jason, game day.
Jason, it's game day. You've got the skinny on all of this, but I'm just going to give you my quick 1 minute of what I expect to happen today. I mean, firstly, the witnesses that we're seeing.
Did you ever think we'd get here?
Yeah, I thought
we have public hearings. From the day we went, you've been this for years. Brexit back in 2016, been working on this for years. You've been working on this your entire adult life. Did you ever think we'd get to the public hearing of the impeachment of Donald J. Trump, the 45th president of the United States?
Yeah, I actually thought we might even get here quicker than this. Look, the way the nullification process has worked so far is they've thrown everything possible at it, everything and the kitchen sink at it. You know, you had the Russia memo, the collusion, the Mueller report, all of that kind of stuff. So this to me wasn't a shock. But what I think we're seeing here with the witnesses, the new witnesses that we're about to see over the next 2 weeks within the House, is that the Republicans are not getting so far at least, they're not going to get any of the big banner witnesses that they want to call. So this, for the Democrats...
Are you whining already? Didn't we get
I am whining so hard right now. I am whining and whimpering so hard.
Okay, we're going to gong show. We got Miller now. We're going to come back to you. But that's why we got Morrison. You got Morrison and Volker.
That's true. So obviously, we're missing Hunter and
only
Joe.
Hunter.
I want Hunter Biden.
Only Hunter and
the whistleblower.
Whistleblower. Besides that,
but look, I can't underscore how big this is. I mean, I was around in Washington when Clinton was impeached, and it shut down everything in the country. And what you've seen over the last 24 hours, and this has been kind of the weirdest thing. Nobody knows what's going to happen here. It's almost like you have the 2-week Super Bowl media preview, but then they get ready to start the game, and people don't know: are we at a cricket match? Are we at a football match? Are we at a baseball game? And so, if you look at everyone's preview stories this morning, basically, they don't know anything to say.
The reason is the others were based upon evidentiary things that had gone on for months and months and months. And you saw that, there were 7 investigations of the Clintons. Nixon was all done through the Judiciary Committee. You would grinded it out. Here, Super Bowl is a great analogy because it could be the greatest game ever. It could be one of those stiffs we had back in the 90s.
Yeah, it could be one of those duds where, John Elway was getting totally pummeled. But one thing that I got to point out, and again, I am not in the overly optimistic camp. I think we're doing this because we're believers in the president. We realize the enormity and the seriousness.
You're saying it's a show trial. This is a Moscow show trial.
Yes, but there's one thing I got to throw out there is that there is something interesting today. We already know what Bill Taylor and George Kent are going to say based on their previous closed-door testimony, which have then been released publicly. Now they're going they're in a public arena. They have national cameras on them. They're being cross-examined. The Republicans now, it's essentially they've had one scouting game, and now they get a chance to come at them for real. And so they're going to be looking for every opportunity to trip up Taylor, to jam up Kent, to make it clear that they're
before I bring our very special guest, let's talk about what didn't happen over the last 24 hours. We had in this seat yesterday Mark Meadows, one of the killers, one of the best things, talking about we have to put pressure. We have to make phone calls. Kevin McCarthy has to put in. Gates has to put in, particularly Lee Zeldin and Mark Meadows have to be out there today on national TV. I'm not whining. I'm stating the fact that this is what is there. Is there any sense of urgency on this on the Republican side? Am I beating a dead horse? Is this once again Bannon's just off on some tangent, or is there any sense of urgency about this?
No, there's zero, and we look around. We were talking about this before we started the show, but where are all the conservatives? And we have our killers, our Gates and Meadows and Zeldin, the 3 killers who are actually on the House Intel Committee. Steve, I was looking through conservative media sites, the top 20 or so this morning. it's pretty dang quiet.
Yeah.
There is no urgency. It's like everyone decided they're going to sleep in today. It's and I don't know if it's because they don't know what to say, or there's fatigue, or maybe some of our friends.
Do
Maybe
you think they
aren't-
bought into it's fake news? It's witch hunt?
I don't know, but what they don't understand is
It
this
may
is
be
the
all of
day-
that, but this is a formal process.
This
It's
is
only
when
been
it
done
this
a
is
couple
when it
times
becomes
in the
real.
history of the republic.
Right. This is when it becomes real for everyone across the country. This is when it's cutting into their Price is Right in The View, and they're seeing this all the time.
Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, the people of the Federalist Papers, the people that constructed the Constitution after our victory in the Revolutionary War. I want to bring in Dave Brat right now. They envisioned that things like this would happen. They warned against factionalism. But they always looked at impeachment as an absolute like neutron bomb. It was only to be used in special situations. Dave Brat, you're a historic figure. If you see the PBS special on zero tolerance, the absolute centerpiece of that is your upset of Eric Cantor, majority leader, for the only time in the history of the republic that it ever happened. A guy that was 40 points down. You then lost in 18 after being one of the stalwarts of the House Freedom Caucus and one of President Trump's biggest supporters. You are what this impeachment trial is about. It's those 31 House Democrats, the freshman Democrats, are going to be the centerpiece of our making them famous, but the entire nation will turn their attention to how they vote. Give us the assessment. Did you ever think we'd be here today? Where do you think we are? How's this process going to play out?
No, I didn't think we'd be here and start
You
with.
never thought they'd actually formally impeach Donald J. Trump and have a formal inquiry in front of the nation?
I didn't think Pelosi would let it go. I thought they were going to slow walk and just say it, whoop up the base, but she'd keep some distance from it. But going back to the founders, and not to put too heavy a weight on it because things change in law and precedent, et cetera. But there is a content level for high crimes and misdemeanors, and the founders wanted that in there. And then Dershowitz wrote a great piece 3 weeks ago in the Wall Street Journal, and he laid it out. And he said, what statute has been violated? And so just with the Russian probe, and then phase 2 was they ruined Kavanaugh's entire life and character. And this is just stage 3, like you guys were saying. It's a fishing expedition. They're searching for it. And Dershowitz went beyond that. He said the founders also knew and anticipated that in the realm of foreign policy, there is no way to draw a bar here, right, when it comes down to making trades of this for that and the other thing. And so the left hasn't been able to show any quid pro quo. That thing's been dashed. They're in
What
search.
about extortion and bribery? They've simplified this. They
Right.
understand the national audience is cutting on for this soap opera, and they're going to be in the House chamber.
Yep.
So they want to keep this simple. Quid pro quo is a little too Latin for them, right?
Right, and that's why I went with the content piece, and that's the latest pivot last week. Now it's down to the president did something wrong, right? Like you took a pencil from the office, right? You stole a pencil from the White House. You did something wrong, and that's the new bar for impeaching and overturning and nullifying an election.
Do you think you think this is anti-democratic? Do you actually believe you've watched MSNBC, you've seen CNN, you've seen they've had all these constitutional lawyers up there? Do you think this is actually a nullification of an election?
Yeah, absolutely. They've stated since day one, and no one believes it, but they own the press, and that my election, et cetera, and that talking about where are the Republicans, they're in self-preservation mode, right? They know they cannot withstand the entire national press. President Trump can. He has withstood it. That's what the American people love about him. He brought a wrecking ball to the swamp. He's turning over everything. And the Democrats, this is why they're impeaching. They know he's going to uncover the rocks in the swamp, and there's all sorts of bodies buried down there and all sorts of money channels that he's uncovering already.
The curtain goes up on this really historic event at 10 o'clock, I believe, on national broadcast television. There is some action right now in the hearing room, is it not, Mr. Miller?
Yeah, we're watching TV right now. We see Bill Taylor coming through the metal detectors as he's entering the Capitol. This will be going live right at the top of the hour. Of course, we'll be here watching.
The best way to do this, put your TV on mute, right, and just and listen to this podcast as we lay out the day, and you can see the physical action going on. So they're going to go through security and get everybody teed up here. Raheem, I want to bring you in. Do you think, you've said this before, why do you think, Raheem, today the curtain comes up on a nullification of the election of the 45th president?
It's interesting to me how much the language has changed over the course of the last couple of weeks and the last couple of months. You see, when the Russia investigation failed, they had to pivot to this. This started with impropriety. It then went on to quid pro quo. It then went on to extortion. They're now talking about bribery. You know, if your legal case is quite set, then you don't actually need to keep changing your legal terms and your angles that you come at this from. And so that's why it's very clear that this is the nullification project. This is the nullification project, not just of 2016, but it actually may end up, and we'll get to this later in the show, it may end up being the nullification project for a lot of these Democrat senators running for president this time around.
Okay, you're listening to War Room Impeachment. This is Stephen K. Bannon, 13th of November, the year of our Lord 2019. It's episode 26. We're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Today is the opening of a historic event, and that is the live tribunal. Really the grand jury phase where the witnesses are going to come forward. We're going to leave with Ambassador Taylor. We will return with our broadcast in just a moment.
Bannon, Miller, Kassam. War Room Impeachment
on the John Fredericks Radio Network.
Welcome back to War Room Impeachment on a historic day. It is 13 November, the year of our Lord 2019, and we are in episode 26, live on the John Fredericks Radio Network every day, 7 days a week, until the day after the acquittal of Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States. We're honored to be joined by former Congressman Dave Brat from Virginia 7, now down at Liberty University. Also, my two wingmen, Raheem Kassam, the War Room director of UKIP, the Rise of the Populist Party in Great Britain, and also Brexit, and Jason Miller. Jason, let's go. If this does not grab people, I'm going to turn to Brat in a second, but if this does not grab people out of the box, like television, because you had Watergate, you had Clinton, and those are the two standards people hold them to, which galvanized the nation. Are they rolling the dice today on the first couple of witnesses?
Well, absolutely, because we don't know how these folks are going to stand up under pressure. We don't know how it's going to look when they admit that they heard something second, third, or fourth hand. And John Ratcliffe, Devin Nunes, Jim Jordan, these guys are killers. I mean, forget about the deadweight like Conaway and Hurd that are still in the committee.
Hurd, you should note, did not show up they had a practice session yesterday, and it's reported that Hurd did not show up.
Why is he still in this committee?
This is outrageous.
I'm so pissed off.
McCarthy, as a minority leader here, this is unsatisfactory. If the guy did not show up for the practice, he should have been fired on the spot, pulled off, and Lee Zeldin should have had that spot.
Absolutely, 100%. So they run the risk of a lot of these witnesses. How are they going to, Taylor and Kent, how are they going to look when they get jammed up? What are their excuses going to be for when they have to answer for their personal opinions and their careers-long work in the Foreign Service and the belief that they don't agree with President Trump's foreign policy?
Do you think they're going to have? You think they're going to have some of the information that you put up yesterday so brilliantly in deconstructing our second witness's background yesterday? Which was pretty bizarre stuff.
It was some pretty bizarre stuff, and everyone should take a listen to what we really broke down. George Kent, the State Department official, went through everything from the his and hers, matching multilingual vanity plates, talking about free Ukraine and Virginia, some really weird stuff. Today we're going to go through it in a later segment. We're going to go through Bill Taylor, and the reason why we're doing this is because they have worldviews that are baked in from decades.
Yeah, we're
of
not
experience.
questioning their patriotism. Taylor's a West Point grad, served in Vietnam, the 101st Airborne. Is the nation? Well, you keep saying the nation is just coming today. This is the curtain goes up on this historic event, which is the live inquiry at the House, really essentially the grand jury. I know it's not actually legally correct, but kind of the grand jury that will lead to a trial. But Dave Brat, the people in Virginia, particularly Virginia 7, Virginia 2, these are two centered, one by Obama twice, one by President Trump, gave that, even added to the big majority we had in the House, but then lost in 18 by the in a very thin margin, in a very tough campaign. Are Virginians, are people in these districts starting to tune into this now? Are they tuned out?
I think they're tuned in, but they're tuned into the wrong channels, and that's the drip, drip, drip against Republicans, right? So you get up in the morning, you listen to public radio on your drive-in. That's all leftist mumbo jumbo. Then you come home after work, you listen to radio, you get the newspaper, you see the New York Times, the Washington Post, which both, together with some others, ran 3 ethics charges against me the month before my election, right? So that's the game plan. You
Just randomly.
Yeah, just randomly 3 ethics charges, da-da-da-da-da. And then you come home and you turn on CNN or whatever they watch, MSNBC, da-da-da-da-da. And it's just a drip, drip, drip that says impeachment. The president's being impeached. So the question is, do the American people and Virginians remember Russiagate, where every night was a new smoking gun?
He's a Russian asset, right?
We've got the smoking gun. We have and that's what they're going to do.
Remember the
this time.
phrase, the walls are closing in.
The walls are closing in, right. And so that collapsed. And
Rachel Maddow.
Kavanaugh.
Every night.
Kavanaugh, same thing. We got another witness. We got another witness. We got another witness. All after the facts come in and not credible. So I think the American people have a sense of that, but they're not zoomed in on this story, I don't think, yet.
So, Congressman, this is a good point because you're in the heartland. You're in one of these swing districts that are out there. Do we think that the Democrats are done here after impeachment fails? As far as for their shenanigans and other things they try to cook up between now and 2020,
Oh no!
can they help themselves? And I think
this is political warfare.
right. I mean, we had Comey, we had
Right.
the Russia hoax, we had the popular vote whining. Now we have this impeachment thing, which we think the Democrats.
No, they're going to
will fail.
try to get to, and we'll talk about the witnesses here in a second. They're going to try to get to Bolton. They're going to try to get to Mulvaney. They're going to try to get to Pompeo. The way they do that, I think, is they're going to have some U.S. attorney go after the Mayor Giuliani and others to try to get to that, try to make some sort of legal charges, get into the legal system, and try to get the emails and all this, and try to break executive privilege by doing this. This is siege warfare, right? They've lost in the first couple, but they don't think they're going to try to bang him up as much as possible in this one, right? But keep coming. That's the one thing. The one thing I admire about them. They're relentless. Right, when we had the House majority, we had Paul Ryan. We should have had the 40 subpoenas that the House Intelligence Committee gave to Rosenstein should have all been executed upon. It was Paul Ryan that kept telling Nunes he removed Nunes from the chair. Right, it was all. These are self-inflicted wounds because we're too gutless to govern.
It raises an interesting question about the continuity of this. Dave, maybe you have an answer to this. If the House votes to impeach, and there's a Senate trial, and the Senate trial fails, and he's not found guilty, can they do it again? And how long until they can do it again?
For other charges, absolutely.
Just more and more.
Yeah, I think they got this thing.
High crimes and misdemeanors stay out there, right? If they view it, look at this narrative. Look at the Washington Post today. The headline: House set for showdown at public hearing. Impeachment probe enters new phase. Parties will battle to define Ukraine narrative, right? This whole thing is a battle in a war. This is another battle in this war to reverse a democratic process.
And I think the dominant theme they go back to by election time is hate not welcome here. Republicans are the haters, right? And so if you go to Virginia's lawn, UVA, on the lawn, every university student on the lawn has a poster, hate not welcome here. That is the central thesis that Republicans have to overcome. So the impeachment goes on top of that, right? The race, sex, identity politics, that was the main driver, just total baloney. Trump, who's friends with everybody across the board of every race, gender, anything in New York City for his whole life, right? Everybody loves him. He's a beloved figure. And now that's cast on him. It's cast on the Republicans. After Charlottesville, we're on the deep. You have to prove your innocence of Charlottesville. And I say fascism. I said, seriously, that requires a big state, right? If you took 8th grade civics.
We're deconstructing
and we want the
administrative
small
state.
state. So it's incredible.
What about we've got about a minute here. What about the witnesses they gave us last night? Is that a sign of panic? We'll get more to that after break. But did they show us a little bit of nerves last night, pregame jitters?
Yeah, I think they showed that what their product that they're pushing forward today, being Bill Taylor and George Kent, isn't selling, and they need some more. So last night, House Democrats announced 8 additional public hearings for next week, and those are 4 on Tuesday.
Jamming it up next week.
4 on Tuesday, 3 on Wednesday, 1 on Thursday. And don't forget, this week we have Friday. So basically, of everyone with Marie Yovanovitch, former ambassador, so everybody, we're going to talk a little bit more about this in the next break, but everybody who has testified behind closed doors so far is scheduled, except for Croft, Anderson, McKinley, and Reeker. Those are the 4 at the moment that we don't yet have locked up.
This is Steve Bannon, War Room Impeachment. We're going to take a short commercial break where we'll return with the entire team in a moment.
War Room Impeachment. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to War Room Impeachment on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Stephen K. Bannon, have Raheem Kassam, and my other wingman, Jason Miller, honored to be joined by the former congressman from Virginia 7, Dave Brat, now down at Liberty University. Okay, let's go back. So you guys believe they did blink last night to announce all these others on the eve of, instead of focusing just on Taylor and focused on what they had to serve up today? They showed some leg about what next week is.
Yeah, and this means that they're going to a process development as opposed to a substance development to try to set the narrative for today. So to be very clear, today we have Bill Taylor and George Kent. On Friday, we have former U.S. Ambassador to the Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch. And then Democrats last night announced 8 additional folks who've already testified behind closed doors are coming back. So on Tuesday, we have Jennifer Williams, former aide to Vice President Pence, and her buddy, Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman.
Big day.
And then also on Tuesday, 2 folks that we requested, Kurt Volker, the former U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine, and Tim Morrison.
The rebuttal.
Yes, and national security aid. These are key. Volker and Morrison completely exonerate President Trump. Then we go into Wednesday, where you have 3. You have Gordon Sondland, who I think he becomes the under the bus everybody beats up on candidate. He's my number 1 draft choice for getting thrown under the bus. But also you have on Wednesday Laura Cooper, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, and David Hale, another one who's great for us, Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs. And then on Thursday of next week, former White House Russia expert Fiona Hill. And then just real quick for folks to know, and Raheem, I know you won't dive into this, 4 people who have testified behind closed doors have not yet been scheduled to go for the public testimonies. That's Croft, Anderson, McKinley, and Reeker. Raheem?
Croft was important, wasn't it?
Well, we thought Croft was going to be important, and I think the Democrats thought Croft was going to be important. But the excerpts of her transcript that we've got in front of us right here showed last week that she was actually a very shaky witness, and her testimony didn't actually match up with what a lot of the key witnesses the Democrats have been calling were saying. There was confusion about whether Ukrainian officials knew about the delay in the $391 million of aid, and I think they've probably made the calculation that even though some of the things she's saying have been used by the Washington Post and others as quote unquote damning evidence against Trump, the timelines simply don't match up with what she's saying, what other people are saying.
Do you agree that right now it looks like, as we've said, they want to be out before the Thanksgiving break? They want to have all the public testimony and then do a report of have America argue about it over Thanksgiving dinner?
Well, yes, as far as the Intel Committee side, but then keep in mind...
Right, we got to come back and do judiciary. I
Yes.
realize it, but the Intel would have to do the report. My point is that this initial public phase, which is phase 2, it looks like right now they will wrap that up next Thursday or Friday.
Yeah, and there also is very good speculation that there will not be any hearings the week of Thanksgiving.
Yes, that's what, and let America argue about it and write the report. What do they have to prove? They have to tee up today to get the American people thinking extortion, bribery. Congressman Brat, what narrative do they have to drive home today to make this thing stick?
Yeah, to make it stick, it's really, really simple. If the charge is bribery, that case is built on 2 prongs, that there's going to be an attack on Biden and that there was going to be a payoff in terms of arms or money or some payoff, right? Neither of those 2 pieces happened. There was no attack on the Bidens, and there was no payoff. And so that's why they're just calling witnesses in a hyper news excitement channel every day. You'll see it on CNN all day today, just losing their minds.
So what are the 2 camps? Their argument's very simple: arms for dirt.
Yep.
We have 2 actual pitches. One is the president's and war room impeachment, which is the perfect call, didn't do anything wrong. This is really a debate on America First national security policy that we should have and we're going to have, about policy difference between unelected bureaucracy that our people think they're doing the right thing but are not implementing what the commander-in-chief was elected by the American people. That's one. The other is a more sophisticated nuance that there's no intent. There was no intent. Where do you come down?
Well, I come down basically with what Maxine Waters stated in print, which is that this is a political affair. It's not legal. And that's the new ground that's been plowed by the Democrats. None of this is a legal case. It's a 100% political show trial. Dershowitz, one of the preeminent liberal minds in the country, said that's absolutely false. It's completely legal. So where I come down is they are trying to deceive the American people out of an election of a president who's in charge of foreign policy and he's uncovering the swamp, and they don't want that because they know what's coming next.
We got about 30 seconds here before we go to another break. Jason, you're a communications expert. How would you set the narrative today for the American? But you've got an ambassador, a guy that's been serving his country for 50 years, right? How would you set, if you're a Democrat, what do you want to come through in the first hour of this testimony?
If you're a Democrat, you want to paint the picture that President Trump doesn't know what he's doing with regard to foreign policy. If I were the Democrats, I would lean into the argument that they're trying to undercut his foreign policy and say he doesn't know how to do it, and that that opens the door for other candidates to come in the 2020 candidates to fill that spot.
That's perfect, Kate. Short commercial break. When we return, War Room Impeachment on the John Fredericks Radio Network, what we're going to do is Jason Miller, Raheem Kassam are going to deconstruct what Ambassador Taylor has told us to date. And we're going to set you, the audience, up to watch at your home with your own eyes and listen with your own ears about what's said. War Room Impeachment will be back in a moment. Welcome back to War Room Impeachment, 13 November, year of our Lord 2019. It's the opening act, the opening curtain on a historic event. It is the beginning of the formal, nationally televised public hearings in the impeachment of Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States. We have Dave Brat, Steve Bannon, Jason Miller, three individuals who put their shoulder to the wheel for many years to make sure the Trump movement became something. And Donald Trump came with this great armor-piercing shell to defeat the Clinton apparatus and lead us to victory in 2016. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we're at the grand jury phase. He is being impeached, so it may be fake news, it may be a deep state, it may be witch hunt, it may be all that. But the process has started today. We have Ambassador Taylor that's going to lead things off here in a few minutes. In 16 minutes, I want to go to Raheem Kassam. Tell us about Ambassador Taylor, what he's told us today. Then we're going to go to Jason.
Yeah, let's remember Ambassador Taylor, William Taylor, first went up and gave his opening statement on October the 22nd. In that opening statement, recall you had 2 pages worth of glorification of his history, his background, self-glorification, and it is a glorious background indeed. He has been
is that self-glorification, or he's just laying out his bona fides? We just talked about what Miller said is that to prove that President Trump doesn't know what he's doing in foreign policy. So Taylor's sitting there going, hey, I've been doing this for 50 years, from the jungles of Vietnam,
Yep.
right, where I was fighting all the way as a dedicated public servant. That's not self-glorification. That's a
isn't.
guy laying out his bona fides to set the narrative.
It is if you fail to address the fact that while you were doing all of these things, basically none of the foreign policy worked. It was all a failure over the course of that time.
Kaboom!
Right?
See, I knew if this is called coach pitch, right? I knew if I teed that up, you'd go yard.
His-
No, but let's talk about that. It's very important. That's what this is about, right? It's 50 years. That is the Madeleine Albright, John Kerry, Jeb Bush, John McCain, Barack Obama, George Bush. It's what's got us into this mess to begin with, and what people reject it more than anything else in 2016.
Yeah, and they say that elections are not won on foreign policy, but I'll wager that a lot of people had in their minds when they ticked Donald Trump in the ballot box that they wanted an end to these endless foreign wars.
American managed decline.
And the managed decline. The most interesting part, of course, about Taylor's testimony was when he basically admitted that he didn't want to do the job. He wouldn't take the job offer from Mike Pompeo, from the Secretary of State, if U.S. policy towards Ukraine was going to change. That is to say, that is an outright admission that you do not see the President of the United States as the final arbiter of U.S. foreign policy. And that's what Taylor said in his statement. He said once he got to Kiev, he found the situation confusing and ultimately alarming.
Before we go to Jason, he also admitted, and you found this, and this is the kind of nuggets, this is where the show was set up, this is what you have a war room for. You found in there that everybody missed, that Morrison had told him, because it's all third-hand information, water-cooled information. He asked Morrison, how was the call? Morrison said, could have been better, right? So you had between a perfect call, as President Trump thinks, and could have been better. And I'm sure that was said with a little undertone of snark. But this is why Morrison was not, when he came up to Capitol Hill, this is why Morrison was not on the original list of people that are going to come and testify nationally. Okay, Jason, let's make Ambassador Taylor famous.
Yeah, so Steve, to reiterate what you and Raheem were saying, to put this into one sentence, why Bill Taylor matters. Bill Taylor's had a front row VIP seat for most of the U.S.'s foreign policy failures for the past 3 decades, and he has a foreign policy worldview that differs from President Trump's. That, in a sentence, is what Bill Taylor is all about. So there's also the weird intersection where he and George Kent, where Bill Taylor was George Kent's boss in Ukraine in the mid-2000s. But again, when we talk about his policy view, first I want to say Bill Taylor is a serious player, as
Yes,
Raheem touched
absolutely.
on. He's someone who wore the uniform. He went to West Point, earned a Bronze Star.
Well, he fought as a young man. He fought in a war. It was another foreign policy failure,
Yes.
right? The whole Vietnam fiasco.
Yes, and then he gets out of the military. He goes and gets his master's from Harvard, Kennedy School of Government. And, of course, he's
He's about his establishment. He's got every ticket punch, what we call it, every ticket punch you could have, right?
Right, so-
West Point, served his country, then goes in to be an ambassador, and he's got every ticket punch either from academically or where he should be as far as this is the establishment.
Right. And as we talk about how someone's worldview is framed, let's look at the last couple decades of Bill Taylor's career. It looks like he was a Carter appointee at the end of the Carter administration into the Department of Energy. Then he worked for former Democratic Senator from New Jersey, Bill Bradley. Here's where it starts to get interesting. From about 89 to 92, he was assigned to Brussels for a 5-year assignment as the Deputy Defense Advisor to the U.S. Ambassador for NATO. So he's plugged in there. So, of course, when he hears from, say, Gordon Sondland or someone like that, he immediately thinks, I know how to do this better than they do.
Well, this is the whole Brussels party at Davos. This is why
Yes.
the Ukraine mess is a mess. This is the EU trying to get the Ukraine to become the EU. This is on the doorstep. Remember, this is the killing fields in World War II. I think 15 million people died, in Ukraine on the German, the Wehrmacht on the way in and the Russian Red Army on the way back. Right, so this is a killing field. He's been obviously indoctrinated into the Brussels NATO mindset.
And here's what people need to realize. Here's what comes next. And Congressman Brat, jump in if you have a thought here. Bill Taylor then spent a decade overseeing U.S. aid to former Soviet countries, former Soviet republics. And so he was at the deputy coordinator of assistance for the whole new independent states of the former Soviet Union. And then he was promoted to coordinator by President Bill Clinton. So think about that. Bill Taylor was in charge of U.S. aid to former Soviet republics for a decade. So how did that, obviously he has a worldview. And then, Steve, this is where I think it's really interesting. In 2003, Taylor was appointed by Colin Powell to serve as the Afghanistan coordinator for the State Department, overseeing U.S. policy toward Afghanistan, and then was promoted in 2004 to serve as director of the Iraq Reconstruction Management Office. So, Steve, were we doing in 2003, 2004, and 2005 in those countries?
Yeah, well, I'll just take up beware the military-industrial complex piece. Hillary, back in 2016 versus Trump, wanted to veer left. Right, and she didn't. Why not? Because if you touch the guardrails of that military, billions, hundreds of billions of dollars, and all the power that goes with it, you're off the rails, and bad things happen. So this week, Nikki Haley lobs a couple bombs at General Kelly and at Secretary of State Tillerson, like there's a mutiny going on in the White House. Well, if that is the case, that's pretty serious news. And so, what is it? Who's got it right there? And that's what is going on with this impeachment.
Is that what's on trial here? Is what's on trial is how we've managed American foreign policy for 40, 50, 60 years, that the deplorable said, hey, it's my kids and my money, and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of having my kids die in unknown places. Not that we're not going to retreat from the world, but what we have to have is allies. Where's Europe in pitch? They started this mess in the Ukraine. Where are they pitching into this?
Right. And so every time President Trump opens his mouth and starts talking about the America First foreign policy, folks like Bill Taylor, it's nails on the chalkboard for them. And this is where, for someone who has such a noble, honorable record serving our country, this is where we get into outright undermining the chain of command, because President Trump was elected.
Okay, we're
to
going
set
to continue
policy.
all that when we return. We're going to take another short commercial break. John Fredericks Radio Network, War Room Impeachment. We will return in just a moment.
Bannon, Miller, Kassam. War Room, Impeachment.
On the John Fredericks Radio Network.
Welcome to War Room Impeachment. Stephen K. Bannon, 13 November, the year of our Lord 2019, episode 26. You can get us on Stitcher. You can get us on iTunes. You can get us everywhere that podcasts are. Hit subscribe. This is the opening curtain on a historic day. In just a matter of minutes, we'll have the first witness Mr. Miller, what do we entail for?
Real quick to wrap up on Bill Taylor. The one other thing I'd say, in addition to being at the front row of all the failures the last couple of decades, being in charge of U.S. aid to former Soviet republics, he spoke out against President Trump, meeting with Vladimir Putin in a 2018 interview with Shocker NPR. And I'd also point out, just for a little bit, even though he doesn't have any direct political activity, his wife has contributed to Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Act Blue, all the
baby.
but that's just so. But also today we have
Pillow talk.
but also today we have George
Miller
Kent.
went there.
That was Steve. The record will show. The record will show. We have George Kent, is the other gentleman testifying today. He's the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs, which means he oversees everything Ukraine State Department. He and Bill Taylor's careers have intertwined over the years regarding Ukraine. He testified previously. He has no firsthand knowledge of anything. And as we talked about last night, George Kent is really now a Ukrainian activist.
During the lunch break today, before the second game of the doubleheader, if you can, it would be advised to go back in the podcast, and we'll put it up on the site of Jason Miller's deconstruction of Brother Kent's life and how he's become an activist. Raheem Kassam, some observations before we go live into the testimony.
Look, the one thing I want to see today is Republicans challenging what was in the Taylor testimony originally, where he said by mid-July it was becoming clear to him that the Zelensky meeting with the president was conditioned on the investigations of Burisma, and then later on in his testimony he said by mid-August the assistants had been held up for a month for no reason that I could discern. There are plenty of inconsistencies in Taylor's testimony. There's plenty of evidence to show he was sitting on boards of NGOs in Ukraine. All of this stuff. I hope that Republicans can cross-examine him and use things that are in the Cooper testimony and other things like that to actually show that this is not just pillow talk, but water cooler talk that's turned into an impeachment.
Brother Brat.
Yeah, the post-World War II establishment was all set up in order to avoid Germany again. What do you have now in Europe? A collusion of all the states into one union with, guess who's in charge? Germany. What could go wrong? That's what's gone wrong. Trump goes overseas, tells them that, says pay your dues, and the establishment...
And Germany's not paying for anything.
And they're not paying for anything.
Right.
They're having a heart attack, and President Trump is rightly focusing on the number one target for the United States right now, which is China. Economically, politically, intellectually, technologically, they are eating our lunch, and this country better wake up soon.
Congressman Brat, I want to thank you for coming in. Real quickly before we go, do you think that this could be the predicate to flipping Virginia 7 and Virginia 2 back to Republican category of how the Democrats comport themselves and how they really handle the President of the United States for the next 6 weeks?
If our leadership messages ever, that would be great.
War Room Impeachment will return tomorrow, 9 a.m. So actually, at 5 o'clock tonight, we're going to have a special on John Fredericks. 5 p.m., we will return with a summary of today's testimony. War Room Impeachment. We will see you at 5.